general announcements. The only thing we've got coming up is we are off from class on Fat Tuesday, which I think is February 17th. We will have assignments due the Monday and the Wednesday. We just not on the Tuesday. Okay. So enjoy your holiday. I'm going to enjoy mine. And I think that's about it for announcements. And of course, NCCT prep is still going on Tuesdays at 2 o'clock. All of my students have been relatively new for a little while, but I do have a couple of y'all that are starting to get to that midpoint of your program. And now is the time where y'all want to consider starting to join in on those NCCT prep sessions. Or I would like to see you, if you can't do that, take advantage of the NCCT prep library that is in Moodle in your Unitech site. Okay. We have the test, the certification exam broken down into 5 different sections. There's a video and a practice exam on each section. So you can see where you're, what you might understand well versus what you might need to study a little bit more before you go and sit for your exam. And that's it for announcements. So we'll get into the meat and potatoes of today. I've got a few short slides. We've had a lot of questions about modifiers, and they're throwing off some of y'all that are newer because it's something new. It's something you haven't seen before. So we're going to kind of dip into modifiers today and explain and go over a few things that are going to be important for you guys to remember while we are working decoding modifier. So,
yes.
What is a modifier? And basically what a modifier is, it's a little digit. Modifiers inform third-party payers or insurance companies, we also call them third-party payers, of circumstances that may affect the way payment is made. Appendix A of the CPT manual lists the full descriptions for all modifiers and the circumstances for their use. Okay. Now, and you see I have listed in here page 917 in CPT 2022. That's the 2022 version of the paper manual. All right. I have with me here today my 2023 version of the paper manual, and Appendix A, I think, is on page 931. So it's from year to year, it'll be off by a few page numbers, but it's going to be in the same area. The book is laid out the same way every year. They just add information here and there, which will affect your page numbers. Okay. All right. So I think a lot of y'all are thinking that you have to remember what each modifier means and you're trying to memorize the meanings and this and that. Please don't do that. Don't stress yourself out trying to do that. That's why they're in the book. So you don't have to. There's no way we can remember all of them. There's I think 50, 30 to 50 altogether that we use for different things. So trying to memorize those is not necessary. It's not necessary. You're always going to have a place to find that information. It is right there in your CPT manual. But required is your effort when you have a look at that and see which modifier fits your situation the best. Okay. All right. So now let's see. What types of information do modifiers indicate? All right. So they can indicate a lot of different things. They can indicate an altered service. If the patient went in for a certain procedure and something happened mid-procedure and they had to change it, they may need a modifier to alter, to indicate that the service was changed. Okay. service greater than usually required, unusual circumstances, part of a service, or discontinued services. That's all altered from original procedure. Okay. Like, let's say they're going in to have a tumor removed. Well, while they're in there, they find multiple tumors and they decide to take them all out at the same time. Well, when they originally planned this procedure, it was for one. Taking out multiple is a group that's been more than you can. So you have to report that with a modifier. We did more than what was planned, and we're letting you know that. Okay, and that way they can be reimbursed for the work that they did. Okay, it can indicate a bilateral procedure. If, let's say, for good example, carpal tunnel surgery, they can have it on one wrist at a time, or they could have it on both at a time, right? So if it's bilateral, there's a modifier that you use to let you know it was bilateral on both wrists or both eyes, both arms, whatever the body part may be, it's the same modifier. All right. Multiple procedures. Sometimes when they're doing more than one procedure at a time and they're not necessarily tied together, possibly, you're going to let them know that, hey, we did this procedure and this procedure and this procedure. Usually they only expect one procedure at a time. That's the normal course of things. So if there's more than one that's done at one time, you've got to let the insurance company know that. Okay. Professional part of the service procedure only. And this is for somebody like an anesthesiologist or a radiologist, where they're in some pathology laboratory stuff where they have to read an x-ray or they have to interpret some test results, some lab results. That's called the professional part because they went to school to learn how to read that x-ray, right? They got a degree in learning how to read those lab results. So that's their professional service and they get paid for that. So we have to include the modifier to indicate that. Okay. And then if more than one physician or surgeon is used, I want to say there's about 3 or 4 different modifiers that have to do with, one is for an assistant surgeon. If you have a primary surgeon and an assistant, there's one for if you have 2 primary surgeons that are working on the same thing, or if you have 2 that are working on 2 separate things, there's modifiers that indicate which circumstance you're dealing with. Okay. And now most of the times you have one doctor that's working on one thing and things are standard, but sometimes it's not the case. Sometimes in emergent situations, you've got multiple doctors working on one patient at the same time to fix multiple issues to save that patient's life. So if you end up working at a hospital in the billing department, in the emergency department, that's going to become a modifier that you are well acquainted with probably. Okay. So that's all the different types of information that it can, and that's not all inclusive, guys. There's more than this. This is just what I wanted to highlight on this slide. All right. So I listed some of the most commonly used ones. And the reason I did this, and I want to kind of go over the meanings for these, is because I want you guys to understand how important it is to read the entire definition of a modifier before settling on that one, because some of them are very, very close in wording. And it's just a slight change that completely changes the definition. Okay. So let's see. 24 is one that is common. An unrelated E&M service by the same physician or other qualified healthcare professional during a post-operative period. All right. So a couple things to understand that you might not be aware of what a post-operative period is. A post-operative period is a length of time after a patient has a certain procedure. They call that the post-operative or after procedure period. All right. So this would be an unrelated E&M which would be like a doctor's visit or a consultation or something like that, right? An evaluation and management service by the same physician or other qualified healthcare physician. All right, so when they talk about same physician or other qualified healthcare professional, what they mean by that is the same doctor that did the original procedure that they're in a post-operative, or when they say qualified healthcare professional, they mean doctors that are under the same tax ID or in the same group with that physician, that same physician. It has to be the same group of doctors, okay? And we'll get, when we start talking a little bit more about insurance and how doctor groups and NPIs and different things are set up, we'll get more into that. But just note that when you're doing billing, all of the doctors that work for one hospital system or one facility or one office may be considered in one group together. And that's what they mean here, is that same doctor or a doctor in his same group, okay, during a post-operative period. So that means it would have to be, they went and saw the doctor or another doctor at that same office for something that was unrelated, but they were still inside a post-operative period. So let's say they had knee surgery and then 2 weeks later, wrist. Well, they may go see the same orthopedist that did their knee surgery to see about their wrist, right? So that would be where you would use modifier 24. It's the same doctor, but it's unrelated to that original procedure that they just had done. Okay? And I hope that makes sense. All right, so 26 is your professional component. And that's, again, you see designated to professional physician component of procedures that have both a professional and a technical, which means like the doctor part of it, and then like the equipment part of it, like the x-ray machines, and then the doctor services, right? Let's see, procedures that have both professional and technical. Equipment modifier TC components, such as the interpretation of ultrasounds and x-rays. And TC means technical component. Okay, but 2026 is the modifier that you would attach to that code to indicate that there is a professional component to that as well. Okay, bilateral procedures, like we talked about, is a 50 if the same procedure is performed on a mirror image organ of the body, such as right and left kidneys, right and left arms, right and left eye. Y'all get anything you have two of, you know? Indicating a bilateral procedure that would be reported. All right, and this next slide is where y'all going to see that it gets tricky. 59, distinct procedural service. Modifier 59 is reported to indicate that services that are usually bundled into one payment were provided as separate services. Okay, so sometimes when you have when they're having a certain procedure done, there's either like maybe some lab work that has to be done beforehand. There's aftercare that they're expecting to provide after this procedure. They're going to take all of this stuff and bundle it together. Like a good example of this is having a baby. And I didn't realize this till I had a baby. I had never done any type of maternity coding or anything like that. But when I went to my OBGYN, they knew at my first doctor visit what that entire, every doctor's visit, ultrasound, you know, what their standard was. They knew what the bill was going to be, what the standard was, and what they were going to bill to the insurance because it was all bundled together. Okay. For maternity care. So 59 would be if I went to them and had a different service that was not bundled into that procedure. Does that make sense? Like, say I had to make an extra trip to the doctor, one that wasn't scheduled, because I had an injury or something like that. I had something not necessarily related to the pregnancy, but had some type of injury that, we wanted to make sure didn't affect the pregnancy or something to that effect. And I had an extra doctor's visit that I needed to have. That might be reported separately. That might be billed separately because it's not part of my maternity care. It wasn't originally bundled into the maternity care. Okay. All right. So 76, 79. Okay, here's where they can be close. Okay, look at 76 and 79. Repeat procedure or service by the same physician. And this one, 76, does not mention anything about the post-operative period. 79 does during a post-operative period. Okay. There, I didn't list all the codes. There's actually like I think a 77 and a 78 that cover those other options, those other scenarios too. I didn't list everything. I just wanted to give y'all an overview. Because like I said, memorizing these is not the goal. It is not the goal. Now, do I suggest, I highly recommend you do hop into Appendix A, go read through all of them just so you're familiar with what's in there. And then one day when you're doing a code and you go, it's going to trigger something in your head. I think I read something about that in the modifier somewhere, in the modifier section. Maybe I need to add a modifier to that. Things will start to connect for you. But it takes the reading. You got to do the reading. Okay. And number 99, multiple modifiers. All right. So on a claim form, there's only a certain number of spaces for modifiers. When you have more than what is allotted, you're going to use 99. It's not often. Okay. I don't think that I've ever filed a claim with a 99 in 10 years. So it's not used often, but it is there in the event. Yeah, that's it for those slides. So what I want to show you guys, and what y'all can, and this will help during your exercises and your tests and stuff like that. Because remember, you can always use your CPT manual. That you're supposed to use your CPT manual. It is not cheating. Okay, this is what we're expecting you to do. Is find this stuff in the CPT manual. So I'm going to hop into the digital manual real quick and show y'all where these are and how quickly and easily you can get to the modifiers to go over them when you're working on your schoolwork. So get rid of that one. All right, can you see my CPT cover?
Yes.
Awesome. All right, so I just opened it up, the PDF. I'm starting here at the front page, right? I'm going to scroll down, and here's the great thing about the CPT. Remember, they have this little legend here for you. And look what's right below that. It's a short list of all the modifiers. And see how many there are, guys? There's a bunch. Short list, page 1. Okay. And look, see Appendix A for full definitions. All you have to do is click Appendix A, and it's going to take you to page 2093. And there you go. This list includes all the modifiers applicable to CPT 2024 codes. The modifier provides the means to report or indicate that a service or procedure that has been performed has been altered by some specific circumstances, but not changed in its definition or code. So like I said, these are just giving more information. Modifiers also enable healthcare professionals to effectively respond to payment policy requirements established by entities. such as your insurance companies. Those are the other entities, and the government is the other major entity that we have to answer to and follow the standards, right? So here's your list. They go into great detail about each one. All right. 22. I gave you a summarized on the slide. Let's see. Increased procedural service. When the work required to provide a service is substantially greater than typically required, it may be identified by adding modifier 22 to the user code. So attach 22 to that regular code. It's telling you how and what to do right there. Documentation must support the substantial additional work and the reason for the additional work, i.e., which means example, increased intensity, time, or technical difficulty of the procedure, severity of the patient's condition, physical and mental effort required. Note, this modifier should not be appended to an E&M service. So what that means is you cannot add a modifier 22 to any of your office or evaluation or consultation codes. Those do not apply. It's going to be a procedure that they did on the patient that required a lot more work than what they were expecting to do. And I gave you thing about they go and take out one tumor and they find multiple and do that. That's a great example. I have a friend whose mom had it's kind of the exact thing. They thought they were going in to take out a tumor and they ended up taking out her colon, her entire colon and part of her intestines, because she was riddled with colon cancer. But they hadn't seen it before they got in there to do it. So now, when it says requires documentation, what that means is we have to get the notes, the surgical notes from the hospital or the doctor. Their staff will provide us those notes, and we send that information in with our claim to say, hey, look, we have our 22 to indicate that we did more work, and here's our notes as to why we did that work. It has to be backed up with documentation. All right, there's a saying that y'all will get tired of hearing me and everybody else say in this program. If it's not documented, and in the medical office, if it's not documented, it didn't happen. Because guess what? If it's not documented, we can't prove it. So if for whatever reason in the surgical notes, there wasn't enough clear documentation, they can refuse to pay for the service, for the procedure, for that extra work. And then our doctor's out. Now, that wouldn't be our fault. If they didn't document correctly, that's not the biller's fault. Okay. All we can do is provide what they give us. It's not up to us to make those notes. All we can do is ask for them and send them to the correct people that need to see them. That's all. Okay. But y'all get what I'm saying about how all the information is right here, and they give it on everyone. Go into a lot of detail on how to use these codes, what you can and can't use them with. 47, anesthesia by surgeon. Okay, again, 50, bilateral procedure. Multiple procedures is 51. 51's kind of common. Sometimes they will do multiple if they can. 52, reduced services. That's if they were going in expecting to do a lot of work and it wasn't as bad as they expected. Okay, we did less work. We'll attach a 52. All right. Let's see, surgical care only, post-operative management. I'm trying to get to one of the ones that get really tricky, those 70 ones. 2 surgeons. Procedure performed on infants less than 4 kilograms. And it gives you, unless otherwise designated, this modifier may only be appended to procedure services listed in this section. So you can't use this modifier in anywhere but these codes. So you automatically know that that's not going to apply to a lot of things. All right, surgical team, if there was a surgical team necessary, repeat procedure by the same physician. Here we go, 66 and 67. Repeat procedure by the same physician, repeat procedure by another physician. So let's say you went and had knee surgery, and then something went wrong and you had to go have it again. If the same doctor did it, they would put a 76. Let's say you were not happy with that doctor and you went to a different office and had a different doctor do it. Well, guess what? You've already had the procedure done, but this is a different doctor. So they got to put a 77 instead of a 76. Okay. But that's where you got to read, guys, because it's real. The definitions can be really close. 78 and 79. Unplanned return to the operating procedure room by the same physician. 79. Unrelated procedure by the same physician. Very close, but different things. All right. And that is pretty much it. But I just wanted to make it very clear to you guys. If y'all take away nothing else from today, take away the fact that memorizing modifiers is not necessary. Just find it in the book. Just find it in the book. And sometimes we don't know if one's needed or not. Sometimes they don't give us enough information to figure out if we need one or not. And we send our claims out. And guess what? They come back to us and they say, hey, this needs a modifier. Okay, well, then we research, we figure out what modifier we need to add. We add it, we refund it. That happens all the time. It happens all the time. Now, if once you get into an office and you're coding the same things over and over, you will start to recognize when things need a modifier and when they don't. There's ones that are going to be specific to your job function that you're just going to use a lot, and they will stick in your mind. You'll remember those, and you won't have errors and denials all the time. At first you may, and that's okay, because you got to learn. There's a learning curve to all this, right? When you first go to work in a medical office, you're not going to know what codes they use all the time or what modifiers they use the most, or anything like that. It's going to take time to learn those things. And that's why I say, getting that foot in the door as early as you can is a really great idea if you can do that. All right, and I think that's it for today, guys. Melanie, do you have any questions while we're on here?
No, I don't think so today.
Awesome. Were you having any issues with modifiers? Did that help clarify anything for you?
It did, because I was having some big issues with modifiers. I just couldn't figure it out, but yeah, it does.
I've been getting a lot of questions about the modifiers this week, so I thought this was a good week for us to do a little dive into it. So good. I'm glad it helped you out. Excellent. Excellent. All right. Well, folks, have a great day. Melanie, thank you for spending your time with me. I appreciate it so, so much. And everybody have a great weekend, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.